Hey everyone, Paradoxio here. Welcome back to a brand new programming tutorial, everybody. Today, I'm going to show you guys how we can make a simple calculator app with C# using the built-in Windows Forms tool on Visual Studios. Now, before we get started with this project, you will need Visual Studio 2022 edition installed. Additionally, you will also need the .NET framework installed with that as well. Once you have those two things installed, we can go ahead and create ourselves our new calculator project by first clicking create a new project and then coming over here to Windows Form Apps. Now, if you don't have this here, then simply come to the search bar and search up Windows Forms. And then the first one you should see will be Windows Forms app. And make sure you click the one that is for C# and not for Visual Basic. Once you select that, go ahead and click next, and we can now name our project. You can also select a folder to set the folder where you want your project to live, if you would like. But once you have done those, you can go ahead and click next again, and make sure that you have .NET 9.0 selected, or whatever the latest version of .NET is at the time you were watching this tutorial. Once you select the latest version, go ahead and click create, and this can take a while, especially if your computer is rather slow. Any minute now. There we go. So once you boot into your project should look something like this. Matter of fact, if it's your first time booting into Visual Studios, you're probably not going to see those two tables that I just shown. Instead, your screen will probably look something like this, and that's okay. But let's take a look around here and see all that we can do. Well, first we have our little form window, and we can resize it to our liking. But if I were to go ahead and click the run button up here, or the run debug button, as it's called, as you can see, our window pops up as our program starts. And this is the template that Microsoft gives you whenever you want to create a new Windows Forms application. Pretty simple. Now, if I were to right-click anywhere on this window, I could select two things: View Code and Properties. Lock controls, we don't really need to worry about. But if I right-click on View Code, it takes us to the source file where all of our code, such as our functions and methods and our variables and such, will go that pertain to our application. If I click on Properties, we get that table I was just showing just a second ago. And this is all the properties for our form, like the text property for an example, which targets the title of our window. Let's change this property. First, select the text property, and you'll know it's selected if it's highlighted in purple. And then we can just change it. And then hit enter when you're done. And you may notice that change has taken place right here. And if I go ahead and run this program, as you can see, the change carries over. We also have a name. And our name is Form1. But what does name really do? Well, if I go back to the Form1 source file, as you can see, this is our constructor for our partial class Form1, which is derived from form. We can change the name of this by coming back to our GUI here and going into our properties, and under name, we can change this to something like application. Hit enter, and if I come back here, that change has also carried over. It is highly not recommended to change it manually like this, as this can cause some conflicts with your application in general. And sorry, I kind of slowed on my speech there, but don't change the name manually. do it through the properties. It just makes your life a lot easier, and your chances of running into an error are significantly lower. Now, there are tons of other properties like size, which affects the size of the window. So this is width times height. So if I change the second number here to like 300, as you can see, our window would change. And then there's a lot of other properties that you can change as well, like a maximum or minimum size, a location, like where you want the GUI or window to pop up. Lots of different things you can change here. We're not going to be worrying all about this, mainly just stuff like font and maybe color if we want, and just pretty much size. All right, how do I actually put stuff on this window? We're making a calculator app, so we're going to want an input field as well as some buttons, of course. Well, I can come up to View, and then I could select Toolbox. And this will pop up our toolbox, and we can just simply drag and drop items onto our window. Now, I'm going to resize this just a bit to make it look more like a compact calculator, but let's drop a text box. So this is an alphabetical order, so text box is going to be down here towards the bottom. And we can just simply drag and drop that. And right off the bat, we can do a number of things. We can resize it, but if I click it, we open the properties window for our text box, and we can give it a name. Now, this name is going to be the variable that we will have to write in our source file if we want to do anything with this text box. So this name here is the variable name, and we can call this something like result box. Now, if I come up here and I run this, as you can see, our text box is right here, and we can type stuff in it, but it's rather small. So let's fix that. Well, I can come up to here, if it would load, and I can select, there we go. I can select the font here, and I can click these three dots, and we can open up a font. I could choose something like bold, and then maybe 18 pixels. And if I go ahead and run this again, there we go. That looks a lot better. Now, I don't want to write letters in here. We're going to use buttons to control the input and such. So something else I can do with this text box is I can come down here to behavior, if I could find it. Here it is, behavior. And what I can do is I can find enabled, which is this one here, and set it to false. And this is going to lock the text box, so that way I can't click on it while running the program and type my own things into it. So therefore, I would only be able to actually change the text property through the code rather than just clicking on it and then using my keyboard. So we could lock that by setting enabled to be false. And that's pretty much it. That's what we can really do with the text box. It's all we really want to do when it comes to building a calculator. Now let's build the buttons. Here it is, button. Now, I like to have my buttons evenly sized, so I'm going to come down to size and change that to 50,50. And that gives us a decently sized button, although I might actually come up 10 extra pixels. There we go, that's beautiful. Now we could change the text, and I'm going to follow the general number pad layout, which is 789 456 123. So 7. And I'm also going to change the font size of this to be bold and 18. There we go. That's beautiful. We can also copy and paste it by just using Control-C and Control-V. And whoops. I did not mean to do that. But that's alright. I'll just fix that later. Alright, we have our 789 456 123. And I'm going to have a CE button to clear the entry. And then there's going to be a 0 here and a decimal. And actually, I might just add another row there so that way we can decide what we want to do with those buttons. But now is our time to just go ahead and resize this window to fit each of these buttons properly, make it evenly sized. There we go, that looks pretty good. And now it's time to change these buttons. Now I'm also going to give each of these buttons their own variable name, and I'm probably going to call it something like numbtn and then followed by the number. As well as giving special names to some of our control buttons, like our arithmetic ones and whatnot. So I'm going to fast forward this part because it's rather lengthy. Alright, so I'm finished with the buttons, and now we can move on to the actual functionality of our calculator. Now earlier I made a mistake, and basically what I did was I double-clicked on my form, and that automatically created an application load method. And I'm going to show you guys how to remove that properly. It is not just simply drag and highlight all of this and delete. Because if I do that, that'll actually cause an error, and I'll have to go to the code and fix it. Which I can simply just fix by removing this line, but you don't want to do that, because that can cause some problems. But if I remove that other line and I start my program again, it'll work as normally. But sometimes you may have to restart Visual Studios, but I think recently they may have fixed that bug and that doesn't happen. Instead, the right way to fix it is to just simply go to your events and remove it from load, which it'll show up here, but I already removed it manually. But I highly recommend you just remove it from load so you don't even have to worry about searching in your code to find that other error. But that's okay. Anyways, let's go ahead and start adding some functionality. Now I'm going to click on enough buttons here, so I'm going to click on these buttons. Whoops. I'm going to have to click off first. There we go. And the buttons I'm going to click on are the ones that are going to input a character into our string up here, or our input field. And I'm going to go to properties, and first I'm actually going to set the cursor to be a hand real quick. If I could find it, here it is. And same thing with this as well. I want that to be a hand. But I'm going to click all of these. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to this lightning bolt here called events. I'm going to click on it. And then we're going to add a click event. So that way we can program something to happen whenever we click on a button. And I can just call this append to calculation string. Hit enter. And now we have created this method here, titled the same thing I named it. And we have two arguments. A sender, which is an object type, and E, which is an event arguments type. Now, event arguments type, we're not really going to worry about, but we are going to worry a lot about sender here. And we're going to use the sender to figure out which button was clicked that called this method. And we can do this by simply typing in button and in our variable name invoked btn, and then we're going to set it equal to sender as button, and we're typecasting this here. Now, the reason we have to typecast it is because I want to access the text property of our button, since we can do that. For an example, we called this results box here result box, and I could type in something like resultbox.text to access that property, since it's an object, of course. Well, we can do the same thing with buttons, but whenever we have sender here, I can't just type in sender.text because sender can be any object. But we specifically need button. So we need to typecast sender as a button, so that way we can now type in something like invoked btn.text. So we can pull the text from our buttons. Now, remember, the text in our buttons here that are going to input something in the field, we're just going to use the text. The text for this button here is the number 9, so we can click it and input number 9 there. And it's just a simple, easy, and really quick way of going about this. Since, I mean, we could technically have 9 different buttons for all the numbers, or I'm sorry, 10 different buttons, but we can simplify this to just use one single method. So after we do that, we can go ahead and type in if invoked btn is not equal to null, and this just simply checks if we have had a sender here. And then what we can type in is resultbox.text plus equals invoked btn.text. Now, what happens if I go ahead and run this? Well, now I can add things to our input box just from that method. And that's it. Now let's create a method for our clear entry. And to clear our entry, it is just resultsbox.text is equal to string.empty. And now, whenever we want to clear the entry, we can just click that button and all of that will disappear. Now, lastly, probably our hardest method we're going to be making, and that's our evaluation method. So go back to where our equal sign is, and we can call this evaluate calculation or whatever. Now, we're going to have two using statements up here, and that is using system and using system.data. After you write those two at the very top, we can come down here and we can type in string expression is equal to resultbox.text. Then var result is going to be equal to new data table. And we're going to use this data table to compute our expressions and return a result. Now we're going to have a try block here. So try double evaluated result is going to be equal to convert dot to double. And double is the data type we're going to use for this. Now, of course, you can use long, integer, decimal, float, whatever you want. If you want your calculator to have very high precision, then I would highly recommend you use decimal, but double is okay. You can use it if you would like. But in here, we're going to type in result.compute, and we're going to pass an expression, comma, null. And then terminate that statement with a semicolon. Now we need to check if our result is infinity or is nan or not a number. And the reason we're going to be doing this is because we can receive infinity as a result whenever we try to divide by 0 or perform any mathematical operation that simply does not exist or just cannot be done. So we can type in an if statement here. If double dot is infinity, and then evaluated result, or double dot is nan, evaluated result. And then in here, we want to have a message box pop up that says something like invalid operation or anything like that. So we could type in message box dot show. Expression was evaluated to be undefined. And this is the message that will show. Now we can also add a title to our message box, and we can call it evaluation error. And then we can add a button, so message box buttons. And then for an error, I just want people to be able to say okay, because I mean, what can you really do about it? And then message box icon dot error. And that's how we can make a simple message box. Now I'm going to zoom out just a tad bit so you guys can see this a lot more. And then after that, we want to reset the result box. It's equal to string dot empty. And then we want to return. Now we need to catch something. So we're going to catch specifically a system.data.syntax error exception. And this is going to be if we have a syntax error with our calculation. So if I add 2 plus signs, or if I divide, if I have 3 divide signs, anything like that. We don't want that to happen, so we are going to simply copy and paste this. And we can type in syntax error. And we could type in expression was not valid. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Result box is equal to result box.text is equal to string.empty. And then we don't have to return here since, well, there's no more code. But after this if statement here, we are going to write result box.text. It's going to be equal to evaluated result.toString. And the reason we need to convert it back to a string is because we cannot insert an integer or a double or any other data type into a text box. It has to be converted to a string first. And that's basically it. So we should be ready to go ahead and just run this program, our little calculator here. And now if I type in something like 7 plus 3, we should get 10. And we do. That's perfect. Multiply it by 3, we get 30. And then let's try to clear it. Perfect. And now I can do something like parenthesis 2 times 3, parenthesis plus 6, divided by 2 times 6. In parentheses, and we'll get 6.5. Now let's try to divide by 0. All right, so we get our evaluation error message, and we can't do anything unless we say okay, so that's good. And let's try to do something like 8 times 3, an invalid operation. We're gonna get a syntax error, so that's nice, that works. Now we could actually do this still. Or actually, never mind. It looks like data table does not allow increment and decrement operators, so that's even better in our case. So this is actually really functional. Now, if you would like to improve on this calculator, you very well can. I am going to have this calculator linked in my GitHub, so if you guys want somewhere where you can just grab the code real quick and modify it, and feel free to actually share your modifications with me. Share your GitHub links in the comments section. You can also share them in our app showcase channel in my Discord server. If you haven't joined already, be sure to do that. And also be sure to create yourself a free account on houseofcode.xyz, where you guys can upload your projects and files, and even open up threads to ask questions and talk to each other. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed tutorials like this and would like to see more, be sure to let me know in the comments section below. And other than that, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next tutorial. Bye-bye, guys.